Hey, podcast listeners. Today we're going to talk about self-attunement and how it is essential for healing physically, mentally, emotionally, integrating, and just becoming a whole human being. The first step in self-attunement is to learn to listen to our bodies and our minds. This requires a shift from viewing what we call dis-ease as problematic to seeing it instead as a type of communication. Now, this flies in the face of the Western medical establishment, including the mental health establishment nested within it. So we have to kind of do an about face and start to view dis-ease as something very, very different than what we have been taught. For example, when many therapists hear that their client is experiencing racing thoughts while they're trying to sleep, they'll respond with teaching that client coping skills such as meditation, deep breathing, or maybe good sleep hygiene. Now, none of these are bad practices to adopt at all, don't get me wrong, but it's using the wrong paradigm, because it's viewing those racing thoughts as nothing more than obstacles to getting a good night's sleep. In contrast, self-attunement sees the racing thoughts as a person's mind needing to process something important, something that they are stuck on, where they have what we call unfinished business. So our job is not to just try to override those racing thoughts so that the person can sleep. Our job instead is to attend to what their mind is stuck on, to understand it and to work through it. Our brain often gets stuck replaying events because it doesn't want to accept the outcome of those events. It wants to change it, which means that we are angry, even if we don't feel angry. As a therapist, once I understand this, I help my client know that they are right to not accept the outcome of those events because what happened was wrong. In other words, I help them to connect to their anger by validating that anger. Next, I help them to express into words what they would like to say in fantasy to the person that's in their mind. This is what changes things for the mind because it gives closure, bringing about that different outcome, one that gives our brain peace. Oftentimes, that anger is anger at ourselves, and we need to speak this out as well, along with giving ourselves forgiveness as we take into consideration the bigger context, such as how we were blind at that time because we were conditioned from childhood to never think that our feelings matter, but we were conditioned to believe that only other people's feelings matter. And that's why we did the stupid thing we did that makes us angry at ourselves. So we need to forgive ourselves. Now, if I am the one who cannot sleep, which does happen, and I have no one to talk to, which again does happen in the middle of the night, I get up and write out all my thoughts and feelings on my computer and I just go to town. I let it all out in fantasy, even if I don't know what it is my brain is stuck on yet. Not only does this allow me to sleep, but I find that I have these amazing epiphanies at 2 a.m. in the morning, oftentimes. So there is nothing like self-attunement. Pro tip, one thing I have learned and is that I need to carve out time each day just to have space to reflect on my thoughts and feelings. So I preemptively can address everything and work them out instead of waiting until I'm about to go to bed. And that's the only time my brain has time to reflect. And then I can't go to sleep. Now, self-attunement entails listening to the tension in our bodies with curiosity attempting to understand what our body is speaking, because our body is always speaking. Now, here's a key that I have developed that helps me understand the language of the body. As a therapist, I have found that different parts of our body are saying different things, and where those things are said often repeats itself. So here's a little key. And first of all, I want you to know that the feelings that our body is trying to communicate to us is because we are dissociating from those feelings. So if we are aware of those feelings and we are being responsible for those feelings, we're not going to have to manifest them in our bodies. But the reason our body is having that tension within it is because we're not listening, we're not attuning, we're not integrating. And so it's outside of our consciousness. Also, all the feelings our body is attempting to communicate to us come from a relational context. Okay. Always, always, always. There's some kind of relationship in our life that is affecting us. So let's start with the gut. That's a very, very common one, the GI. So this includes all of our digestive tract, including our esophagus. It also includes our reproductive parts, like for a female, so our uterus and our fallopian tubes and whatnot. It really includes kind of everything in our abdomen. So this is where we feel primarily shame, where we feel betrayal by someone else or self-betrayal. It's also where we feel disgust, which I've talked about before is a type of feeling of hatred. So those things show up primarily in the gut. I have seen diverticulitis flare up when someone is feeling shame from a person at work or a person in their personal life. Diverticulitis bouts often correspond with shame bouts, but again, that person isn't aware of their shame consciously. That's why it's showing up in the gut. Once they become aware of it and address it, the gut heals. The diverticulitis heals. Bulimia is associated with shame. Bulimics have often been conditioned to believe that they are responsible for other people's feelings, and they will feel intense shame when the people around them are not happy, fueling their bulimia. Heartburn is associated with shame. We'll get back to that. I have seen, this is a fun one, I have seen my clients when they have a breakthrough because they are suddenly being true to themselves in their life in a new way, I have seen their constipation completely clear up overnight. Okay, so our gut really gets happy when we start being true to ourselves and doing right by ourselves. Another fun example of this is I have found that people will suddenly have healthy bowel movements when they have been able to achieve a sense of closure in a new way in their lives. So this is my personal story about my own GI issues. If you recall, I've shared this story before, but about 16 years ago, I desperately needed my husband's empathy. He withheld that from me. And in that moment, little Bronwyn, without her conscious awareness, re-experienced the lack of attunement and empathy from her mother. And so what happened was I began to feel voraciously hungry day and night at that time. And I would just keep eating and eating and eating. I gained about 30 pounds in 2 months. And I would also vomit at random times involuntarily, such as while driving on the freeway or walking down the street. So if we think about this as something that we're re-experiencing as an adult from some kind of unprocessed childhood trauma, this makes so much sense. That hunger that went unabated, that I could not stop eating, was my emptiness that I felt as a child when I felt so unwanted and unseen by my mother. And the vomiting was the shame that created in little Bronwyn. So my body was re-experiencing something that I had never consciously worked through. Most shame is not rooted in the present, but is triggered from something in the past, again, that we have not processed. When we take the past into perspective, everything in the present makes complete sense. So, for example, I knew a man who had heartburn so badly, he would find himself oftentimes vomiting all night and not being able to sleep at times. And this did not make sense in the present. No one could understand why. But we factor in the fact that he was adopted as an infant. And the fact is that all infants implicitly feel shame. They implicitly feel unwanted and rejected by their mother. And he had never worked through that. And now, as an adult, he had just become a father, and his wife was losing herself in that new baby. So his little self, his infant self, was re experiencing that rejection, that feeling of unwantedness and shame in the present. When we understand the backstory, everything becomes illuminated because there is nothing new under the sun. Okay, so let's move on from the gut. Chest and shoulder tension is anger. Eye tension. And I have seen this. This is hard to believe, but it is literally when there is something we don't want to see or believe about someone. Neck tension, the back of the neck, that's when we dissociate from what we want to say in anger to someone. So we're dissociating from the anger when we actually want to say something. Now, throat tension and jaw tension is when we do want to say something to someone. We're not dissociating from that anger. Lower back tension, very, very common. This is where we dissociate, again, in the back of our body from what the front of our body is feeling or would feel if we allowed it to, which is usually shame or disgust. Upper back tension is we are dissociating from our chest and the anger in our chest. Shoulder heaviness is often guilt. Coldness in the body is evil. There's someone evil in our lives, and our body is trying to communicate that. Tingling or tension in our legs or feet, our body wants to exit a relationship. Unabated hunger, like mine, is when we are feeling so alone and so unnurtured. Headache, very common. This is when we are dissociating from our anger. We are trying to talk ourselves out of it, and it shows up in our head. Fatigue, oh, so common. We feel fatigue when we are dissociating from our anger. Always, always, always. Difficulty breathing or tightness in the chest. That is when we feel hopelessness. And like proverbially, we hear people say, oh, I feel like I can just take a deep breath right now. Well, we say that because we feel hope. We suddenly feel hope. So a deep, long breath is hope. If we feel like we can't breathe, we're having tension in our chest, we're feeling hopeless. Now, also, please keep in mind that anxiety, depression, and mania are also ways that we disassociate from anger in the body. I'm also starting to see an association between feeling helpless and diabetes, of all things. I could give you a few examples, but I'll just suffice to say that I think as we feel real or perceived helplessness, it makes sense that our body might develop diabetes because the pancreas is where we produce insulin. Insulin is our body's number one growth hormone. So if we're feeling helpless, it makes sense that our body would not want to grow or even regenerate. So how do we self-attune? Let's say I just listened to this podcast episode, so I learned where I'm feeling what, and I'm feeling tightness in my chest. I would start by taking a moment just to feel this, moving toward that sensation. Then I would speak to my body. Now, I would say it out loud, but the body really hears us when we speak out loud. And I would say, Bronwyn, it seems like you're feeling hopeless. I feel you. Thank you for sharing this with me. Your feelings matter to me. Your feelings tell me what you need, and I am committed to doing right by you. So we are going to work as a team and collaborate so we can create hope for ourselves. Okay. And if you actually were to do this, you would actually likely feel like you can breathe much more expansively. So let's say I'm feeling a lot of fatigue that has no obvious source. I would pause and I would say to my body, Bronwyn, it's okay to feel your anger. That's a valid feeling, and we're going to feel it together because what's shareable is bearable. So you don't have to feel it alone. It gives us wisdom regarding what we need to do and the steps we need to take, and we will channel it out of our body in a healthy way. We can trust ourselves. Our body will literally respond to what we are saying to it. So please be encouraged. If I find that I have a lower backache, I would say, Bronwyn, it is okay to feel that shame in our gut right now, or that disgust. It's okay to feel that. We're going to feel that so that we can process it together so it no longer haunts us. So it is a good idea to start preemptively by just talking to our brain, since most humans dissociate into our heads all the time. So we don't want to do that. So I would start with saying, brain, I really appreciate you. You do a lot of excellent work, but right now I'm going to have you take a break because I need to feel my feelings in my body, and it's safe to feel them right now. And you will find that you will suddenly feel things in your body that you didn't feel before. So in essence, what is self-attunement? We are looking for an inner conflict that is held within the body. We are looking for anger and how we are betraying ourselves in some way, and how our body is attempting to communicate that to us. Self-attunement creates integration because we are being honest with ourselves, moving toward our feelings in efforts to do right by ourselves. This is how we start. We develop a relationship of empathy and nurture toward ourselves. We show curiosity and validation, not judgment and not neglect. And it works, bringing healing and wholeness, mind, body, and spirit. Self-attunement is how we come alive. It's us rescuing ourselves. Please join me. All right. Thanks for listening today. Please share this with a friend. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel or this podcast, and please give me an awesome review.